What is going on, Bucs fans? We are live with a lunchtime special, hopefully making your lunch break a little bit better today here on the Pirate Parlay podcast on the Sick Podcast Network. And we have a good one today. We're going to be breaking down all the sights and sounds, what we've seen, what we've heard, what we're thinking about Bucs training camp about a weekend now, and 2 practices and pads. So we have a special guest on. We'll get his thoughts and views on what's been happening, a couple injuries and housekeeping things to touch on, but welcome to Pirate Parlay at lunch. So we'll be right back after the break.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to the Sick Podcast. Pirate Parlay.
Battle intercepted, picked off in the end zone. Bucs are going to beat the Chiefs. We're the champions of the world.
The sickest Tampa Bay Buccaneers podcast. It's going to be sick.
Back here on the other side, bringing you all the sights and sounds and insights from Buccaneers 2025 training camp. I've been out there for several practices, but our guest today has been out there at every practice, holding it down for BG Bucs Game Day. He's our editor-in-chief, our lead writer. He's the man you guys know as River Wells.
What's good? How's it going?
What's up? What's going on, River? Appreciate having you on here. The Pirate Parlay podcast again. Frequent guest on here. Man, football's back, and it's back like when you get to training camp, but when the pads come on it, that's when it's really back. So far, a couple of days, we've had 2 of the hottest days in Tampa Bay history.
It's not great. It's not great. No, thank goodness we were inside yesterday because I don't know if I could do 3 in a row.
Yeah, it's brutal out there.
It is.
I couldn't make it because of my son's practice. Because I'm back coaching, guys. I didn't tell you, brand new. My son's playing football again this year. Decided last minute the spot, and now I'm coaching. So we were at practice out in that heat. I was very envious of you watching the Buccaneers practice in the indoor.
Yeah, for sure. And there's no AC in there, but it's still about 1,000 times better than it would be out there at 8 and 9 a.m. You know, it's once more to the fray tomorrow.
Oh yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, I'll be back out there side by side with you, so I'll be suffering that heat with you. But what's your initial takeaways so far from training camp? You know, this is what you've kind of gathered. Maybe some thoughts you had going in that are correct, or maybe some things that are changing your mind.
Yeah, well, I think it's important to know that training camp really is often both sides of the ball, kind of getting used to things and the swing of things. They're trying new things, right? So sometimes when you look at one side of the ball struggling or one side of the ball being really good, it's hard to tell exactly where that's going to lie in the regular season because of just how experimental everything is. Right. That being said, I've talked about it in my last few recaps on Bucs Game Day for my training camp takeaways. With the secondary, to me, has been the biggest surprise of camp. A lot of interceptions. You know, there's been, I think, to my count, like 2 days without a pick, maybe 1. Had a few last night as well in the indoor practice facility. So the secondary seems to be swarming everywhere. Tyke Smith in particular has been very impressive playing that safety nickel hybrid role. And man, it just seems like all those turnovers and those ball hawks that Todd Bowles wanted are really kind of showing out in full force. You know, we got guys like Benjamin Morrison's playing pretty well out there. He had a pick last night after getting beat by Mike Evans on a rep. He came back the next play and got a pick. So that mental resiliency is really important. Yeah, you got Todd Bowles sending the nickel corners on a blitz a lot. You got Jacob Parrish and J.J. Roberts there in the backfield. We talked to Jacob Parrish last night, and he said he's actually really excited to do that in Todd Bowles' defense because they never sent him on blitzes at Kansas State. So he said, I'm ready to get in the backfield and get some sacks. So,
and both of those guys on money you just mentioned, Roberts and Parrish, they both flew into the backfield the other day and would have drilled the quarterback had it been a live period. And you're starting to see them experiment with both of those guys a little bit in there. And I brought up Roberts previously just because his versatility is also learning safety too. So
they've got him in a lot of different positions. He can play a lot of different positions. And when you look at the guaranteed money he got in his contract, it makes sense they were really high on him coming into this training camp. So it's cool to see him being used in a lot of different ways. And you know, depending on how the roster composition goes, they could end up finding a place for him in a lot of different areas.
So let's stick on the secondary because that was one of the topics I want to bring in. Benjamin Morrison, obviously first round talent, fell because of the hip injury. We were all
Mhm.
expecting him to be sidelined until training camp, made an appearance at minicamp, and not just an appearance. He went up, highballed a
On
pass,
Emeka Egbuka. That's
first
right.
rounder, and said, "I
Climb the
should have been
ladder.
where you were."
Yeah.
uh, and then obviously the goldfish mental resilience. I saw the play. Luckily, a fan captured it. I got to see both plays back to back, and you could see goldfish mind. And that's what it is about a corner. You lost the play to a Hall of Famer, Mike Evans. How do you rebound? And he comes down with a pick. Jacob Parrish has been all over the place. Interceptions galore for him, stating back to the day one of rookie minicamp. He's pretty much penciled in as that nickel starter. He's taking all the starting reps there.
And he told us as much basically on the podium last night. He's like, yeah, I'm working with nickel in the first team. So that's basically where it's going. Yeah.
Right. And then Zion, Jamel Dean, you're looking for a big jump in Zion and a contract here. You're just looking for health and consistency from Jamel.
For sure.
And Kendall Vildor getting surprising shout outs from Coach Bowles and other people. Jason Light talked about him before training camp started. So this was a weakness last year, glaring weakness, especially when injuries started. And I didn't even mention Bryce Hall's resurgence. Talk to me about how these guys have looked so far in camp, and should fans be nervous with this depth they're carrying?
No, I was actually going to bring up, we should shout out Bryce Hall. He's had 2 picks, I believe, in this camp. He had one last night in the back corner of the red zone during red zone work, and he had another one that would have gone for 6 in a real game a few practices ago. So it's great to see him back and healthy after suffering what essentially was the exact injury that Chris Godwin had last year, but he had it in week 1 of that year. So he's looking really good, and having a depth piece like that where he was missing, that butterfly effect from last year kind of was pretty significant. Once Hall was out, that made the depth that much razor thin, and when they actually needed to pull from that depth later in the season, they didn't have it. So to have him there and have Kendall Vildor be a nice surprise. Remember at the beginning, kind of in the offseason, I was, wondering, like, is he going to make the roster? Just because of how the makeup was. He was brought in for potentially a special teams role. They got some other guys that can do that too. And, man, let me tell you, he has impressed while he's been here. He's made some good plays on the ball. He's swarming around both in the run game and the pass game. He's pretty consistent. And another interesting thing is that coaches rarely say this during the offseason, but we had Todd Bowles say that Christian Izzian has made the team. He's like, he did it. Lock. And that's because he can just the Todd Bowles coach speak vernacular is that he can do a lot of things, but he can do a lot of things, right? He can play a lot of different positions. He played a little bit outside corner.
Outside corner. He got thrust out there.
Exactly. So he's kind of just point me and shoot, and I'll be there. And he can do so many different things in the defense. So that's already a versatile player who's also, I think, has been pretty impressive in camp as well. He's made some good pass breakups, and he's been swarming around when he gets his playing time. So it's encouraging to see this depth, right? And if this depth can hold, and you can get guys like Jamel Dean healthy and have Benjamin Morrison there, maybe in rotation, or this unit that was absolutely a weakness last year can turn into a pretty decent strength.
Yeah, and Monday he dog walked Sterling Shepard. I heard Stark got him back last night, though. Did he?
Yep. Yes, he did, for sure.
But he also had a pick
that Sterling's cool, too, because we were talking to Jacob Parrish, actually, and we were like, who's your favorite wide receiver to go up against? And, he's in a room with Egbuka. He's in a room with Mike Evans. But he said Sterling Shepard. And he said he's a very savvy route runner. He's a veteran. And, I like what I learned when I go up against him in camp. So you can even see the value from Sterling there as well. And this just incredibly deep wide receiver room. I mean, we're talking about Sterling Shepard. He's like wide receiver 5, right? So, yeah.
It's a perfect segue, too, because we're going from an unexpected strength, right? Cornerback, even after the draft, there were still question marks. But with how well BMO and how well Jacob Parrish and Kendall Vildor and Bryce Hall have been playing, you feel really strong about that group. And you always felt strong about this wide receiver group before the draft. After the draft, you were just like, oh, shiitake mushrooms. What are we doing here?
Mecca. You still got J-Mac in there. You still got Sterling in there. So
this is a bloodbath. We knew it was going to be a bloodbath for those final probably 2 spots. I assume they'll keep 6 wide receivers. I know they kept 5 going in last year, but I expect they'll keep 6 this year. because they went into the season with 4 running backs. They're not going to do that this year. So automatically displace 1 for a wide receiver. We get there. But this was something that battle for that 5 and 6 spot was going to be intense. And we also talked about that battle for the 3 spot. And, McMillan has looked pretty sharp. He had one really bad practice so far down the line. But Ibuka's just taking it to another level. Like, just there's no competition, right? Like, when Godwin comes back, he's wide receiver 3. Right now, he's wide receiver 2, right?
Yeah, I would say so. And I know we kind of did this last year with Jalen McMillan, and it ended up working out with Jalen because he ended up producing pretty significantly in the back half of the season. But he was slow to get off. We were like, oh, Jalen McMillan. But to do it again, when you look at Emeka Egbuka on the field, man, he's just smooth, and he doesn't. I was talking with Rick Stroud one time a few camps ago. We were just sitting at the corner of the end zone watching him work, and Rick turned to me and he said, "That doesn't look like a rookie to me," and I couldn't agree more. He looks polished. Finding space in that short intermediate game is so important to this modern sort of McVay offense the Bucs run, and you can just tell when you see him, his ability to do that is going to be so worthwhile to this Buccaneers offense. So he looks super polished. He's always in the right place. Really good at yak yards and getting those yards at catch. He's very reminiscent kind of the style that Chris Godwin plays. Of course, you can't replace Chris Godwin or do all that, yada, yada. But that archetype is exactly what he is. And that archetype, you could argue, obviously, Mike Evans is the weapon that the Bucs have with his experience and the way he can come down with jump balls. But that Godwin-type receiver is the most important part of this passing offense, I would argue, as far as personnel. And Emeka Egbuka fits that absolutely perfectly. So
and depending on whatever you envision your slot to be in this offense, that's the kind of guy that you're looking for. And to pile on your point, Baker Mayfield was in an interview with I think Gerald McCoy or Pete Prisco, one of them. He's done so many of them, and he said he's Chris Godwin Jr. Like, that's who he reminds me of. And it's funny. I had a buddy of mine text me the other day. He's like, "What's up with Ibuka?" Shout out Phil. "What's up with Ibuka? Do you think he can? What do you think his ceiling is?" I'm like, "He's wide receiver 2, high end wide receiver 2.
Yeah,
maybe low end wide receiver 1, 1B type deal. Like, he's Chris Godwin, is what I told
Chris Godwin. Yeah,
that's what he is. He's not going to be one of these Hall of Fame Mike Evans caliber, but he's going to be an upper echelon wide receiver that
the superstar potential.
Get him.
The superstar potential might not be there, but I mean, there's also still value in just having a guy that can come in and his floor is sky high and he can just play in an NFL offense.
Any position.
And it looks like Baker Mayfield said, like he said, he's done the interview tours about, a lot recently, but mentioning the phrase plug and play has come out of his mouth quite a bit. And that really is, who Emeka Egbuka is. So that's going to be pretty valuable, especially Josh Hazard gets to kind of play around with that too, right? He gets to see where he can put Emeka, he can see where he can put McMillan. And as we're kind of looming toward the season and we're wondering if Chris Godwin's going to be able to play for those first few games, if he could end up on the PUP list, perhaps next to Tristan Wirfs, potentially miss those first 4 games, you would be right at home still with Emeka in there, right? So with how deep this room is, that's the best scenario you could be in without Chris Godwin, right? And if you want to try and win, 2 games out of that first 4-game stretch, that's the type of guy that can make that happen.
Right. And when you have this competition and this depth in this wide receiver room, it just makes everyone better. And the person who you wouldn't think it would affect because he's at the top and doesn't really need to worry about anything other than just going out there and playing ball is Mike Evans.
Of course.
Yet Mike, and I pause for dramatic attention because Mike Evans has just looked otherworldly this camp. And
as he always does.
It looks like a guy, but this year just everything feels different around the Bucs this year. I don't know if you get that sense or feeling or anything, but it doesn't feel like the last couple of years where you thought they might be able to make some noise. It really feels like, for me, like they can make some noise. They know it. We know it. Everyone knows it. Like, go out there and do it. And with a guy like Evans, he looks like he's got Hall of Fame on his mind, is what I'll say. I feel like that's kind of his intent going into this season. He's been so dominant.
Yeah, and just that experience he brings is so valuable, and the way he plays, he complements this passing offense really well. And we've seen that last year with the work that he was able to do. But like I just talked about, while the Godwin slot archetype is probably the most important part of this offense, having a guy like Mike Evans in the skill set, he has underrated route runner, by the way. People think he's the thing that's tragic about Mike is that people will be like, he's the 1,000 yards guy. Like that's all he becomes kind of in the minds of NFL fans. And he's a lot more than that. He really is. He can run routes. He can get your go balls. Very smart player, very physical up front. He's just a great wide receiver. And that's what he uses to get to 1,000 yards. So to have that skill set in conjunction with the stuff that the Bucs already have that's really good for this type of offense, a pass catching back like Rachaad White, a slot guy like Chris Godwin, it just really brings the whole thing together in such a nice way. And you saw that with a top 5 offense last year. And you mentioned there's an aura around the Bucs. It depends on a lot of things, obviously, but when you look at it just from a strictly roster and continuity standpoint, the offense is back with additions of Mecca and Tez Johnson. The defense struggled last year. Well, now they've got 4 new draft picks and some UDFAs that can contribute. So the roster, in theory, has only gotten better.
Right.
So then it comes down to coaching. It comes down to how well your draft picks hit. And those things, can be debated back and forth on just what the ceiling for this Bucs team is and health, obviously. But from just a bare bones standpoint, the roster's only gotten better.
Right.
So there's reason to be excited, I think. And it's going to be a little bit of a tough road those first 4 games with the injuries you're going to be facing. But that's not going to kill your season. And I think we've talked about this, JC. You've got 4 games without Tristan Wirfs, probably, at least. You've got the Falcons in week 1, Houston on the road week 2, Jets back here week 3. Great uniform matchup coming up there.
Yeah.
We love those throwbacks. And then you've got the Philadelphia Eagles in week 4, who are a locomotive of pure football adrenaline. But if you can win 2 of those games, you can beat the Falcons, you can beat the Jets, which I think are very doable. And then with Tristan Wirfs and Chris Godwin come back in week 5, you're rolling. You're absolutely rolling.
Right.
So there's definitely a lot of potential for this team to make things happen. It's going to come up to the things that we've been talking about for years. Todd Bowles is coaching. These last 2 years, we've had this just barely get by, this mid-season dip. If we have another one of those, people will rightfully start asking questions. But the Bucs don't want to do that this year. They want to go out there and defeat their opponents soundly. So it's going to be fun. And from a purely roster building team strength perspective, it's looking like they could only be better than they were last year.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And I think even if somehow they beat the Falcons and Eagles, those are the 2 games you really want to win in that stretch.
For sure, because of the NFC
conference
thing.
Conference
With the Eagles. Now, the Eagles are a freight train, and I know for the Bucs fans listening out here, the Bucs have done well against the Eagles in the past. They will probably have both their wide receivers this time around. And they're still very talented. So that'll be a fun matchup. But as wrestling great Ric Flair once said, to be the man, you got to beat the man. So those type of matchups become very important for any team that wants to truly contend in their conference. The Big Bad Wolves coming in week 4. Well, you got to blow the house down.
Right. It'll be fun to see that. You mentioned a few things, obviously injuries, health, and the whole Tristan Wirfs thing. Before we get there, just to touch on wide receivers real quickly.
Go for it.
Who do you think has shown 5-6 right now, if you had to make those determinations?
Tough, because there's so many great wideouts, especially in the bottom half of the depth. But I think it's probably going to be what the expectation is, I think, among most people, which is that Sterling Shepard and Tez Johnson will probably be your 5 and 6, I think. The thing about Sterling that's interesting is he's probably not going to play team, so he has no value there. But I think he did enough last season to warrant that chemistry with Baker, to warrant being on that roster. And then Tez Johnson's probably your kick returner. And people have raved about his ability to make things happen with the ball in his hands. If he's wide receiver 6, I don't know how often he's going to be able to get on the field.
I don't like 5 plays a game or something like that.
Yeah, but if that's the case and Josh Gazard likes it, they can use him there. But he'll be on the field and kick and punt returns. And, that being able to make guys miss in space, which he told us he personally picked up from Bucky Irving. So now he's got all the time in the world to give him personable tips just in the same building. That's where he's going to make the roster, and that's that special teams wild card that's going to earn him that last spot. Trey Palmer, probably one of your first men out. He's had a great camp, but he was injured yesterday. So we'll have to monitor that. And if he can't get back on the field and continue having a great camp, that spells bad news for him. Cam Johnson's hurt. He's always hurt. Todd Bowles said the one thing we want to see from him is him being healthy at the combine. He's not healthy. That's an automatic incorrect buzzer right there. And then you've got some talented guys like Rakim Jarrett and Ryan Miller, who Rakim Jarrett always has a great camp. I mean, he's another guy that just can't stay healthy, unfortunately. So he could probably have a really good practice squad usage if that's somewhere he's willing to stay. But guys like Ryan Miller as well, Ryan Miller was a Kansas City Chiefs potential hero last year, and then he might not even make the roster this year, which is pretty incredible thing. So I would say probably Sterling, Shepard, and then Tess Johnson. I don't know what your thoughts are.
And I think the practice I've been out there, they've definitely shown that they are the two worthy of that spot. Again, Trey Palmer was looking really well, coming along really well in camp, but now sideline with an injury hurts his chances. And I think once you got to that point, I think you're probably really only talking about those 3 guys battling for those 2 spots with Jarrett and Miller and the likes. Maybe Jarrett having a slight edge to be added to that 3-way, but
I think so.
It always looked like it was coming down to that. You mentioned injuries and staying healthy. Something the Bucs have already struggled to do, obviously, with Tristan Wirfs having that surgery. Chris Godwin on PUP. But the latest news since the last podcast, David Walker, Bucs 4th-round draft pick this year, going down with a torn ACL. Tough blow. What does it mean for the Bucs? Obviously it means for him, he's got a redshirt year, and he's going to be 26 when he takes the field for the first time. And it's going to be an uphill battle for him. So what does it mean for the Bucs, though?
Yeah, well, the thing about Walker is that he was probably going to be like the 5th guy in rotation, right? So I would say it's probably not a huge blow for the Bucs this year. But where it does really become unfortunate is that Walker was impressing in camp, and he probably could have gotten a few reps here and there in very limited areas during game time and in practice. And so when you talk about that redshirt year, you're losing a year of potential development with David Walker. And with how impressive he was early on, that really sucks, because you would want him to keep developing as that edge rusher, and then maybe next year crack into that 3 and 4 type of spot, to get some more reps in rotation. So hopefully he can recover very well, and next year he can just hit the ground running once again and try and make up for some lost time in his development cycle. But I think for the Bucs, I don't know what your thoughts are on this, JC, but I figured, it would be Braswell probably and Nelson as your 3 and 4 rotational guys, and then Walker would occasionally come in there. But so from that perspective, not a huge immediate loss to the depth. But then again, we talk about depth. If Yaya or Hassan Reddick were to go down, or maybe if you lost Nelson or Braswell, Walker would have been the perfect guy to kind of step in there and fill that in. And like we talked about with the Bryce Hall thing, right? Knock on proverbial wood here, hope that's not the case. But if one of those guys goes down like that, that can sometimes trigger a whole crazy butterfly effect where when you need to draw from that depth, it's not there anymore. So hopefully that's not the case. And hopefully David Walker can get back going, because he had a pretty promising camp in the reps he had. And we've talked to a bunch of different people, Bucs communication staff, some of the reporters, and he just seems like, a stand-up dude who's been really cool and excited to get here. So it's a shame that had to happen.
Yeah, it's a loss. He was I had him on the podcast when he was drafted. He was definitely a loss. I think he's going to be a great player when he gets there. But you're right. He was probably, 4, 5 on the rotation.
Yeah.
I'm sure they're, probably split time with Anthony Nelson to an extent. When you want to try something fun, you throw him in. When you need something done, you throw Nelson in, type of deal.
Right.
Or how quickly he could bond up there. It hurts, and I wrote a piece about Shaq. Could they consider Shaq Barrett? when you look at the market right now, it's like Jadeveon Clowney and the Smiths, Zadarius and Preston, and those guys are waiting for an injury to happen to a starter. They're not waiting for an injury to happen to the fourth, fifth guy on your team.
Right.
They're not looking for rotational. And Shaq Barrett is something he did, but I wonder if he's lost a step last year. You've got Hassan Reddick in the room, so you don't really need a veteran presence. So there's really not much out there. They could bring back Daniel Grzyk, who was on last year, if they wanted another body in the room. But really, unless it's kind of swapping parts, or whether it's the situation where they are picking someone up after the cutdowns, I don't think there's a move to be made to this room.
Yeah, I would agree. Like you mentioned, exactly. You would have to get a guy who's willing to be your fourth or fifth rotational edge rusher. Right. And that's not super appealing to get hit in practice all the time for. But it is for guys, like you mentioned, guys like Grzyk who need to get back on a roster. And familiarity with the scheme in this case is going to be the most important thing, right? You would prefer a guy who can play.
Right.
Because it's an emergency. It's a break glass type of guy. Right. So I think that would make a lot of sense, like you mentioned. And Shaq Barrett, I don't know what Shaq Barrett's aspirations are in particular and where he wants to play, but that's another guy who he just knows how to do it. If he's willing to not get a lot of pass rushing reps.
And he played special teams last year, too, in those 2 games.
He did.
Total special teams snaps.
Which begs credit to him for being willing to do that. I guess so many guys are like, but, that's a guy who loves football right there. That's another possibility. It would have to be for very cheap. Jason Light, I know, doesn't want to go out and grab like another guy. That's expensive. Yeah. So that's what I would say.
Yeah. Well, let's stay on that room. Let's shout out some people in the comments here. We got Slim Stank in the comments. Good afternoon, go Bucs. Matt D, first live show. Is great meeting you on the Bucs cruise. JC, love the podcast. That was awesome. Bucs cruise was so much fun. Got to meet a bunch of people, including Matt. So Michael Plus, a good doctor over at Real Bucs Talk, says he's got Evans, Godwin, Ibuka, McMillan, and Tez Johnson. Then a practice squad of Sterling Shepard and Cam Johnson.
5.
So he's got only 5 on there, which is an interesting. They could do that. It's going to look different because Godwin will likely stay on PUP anyways. And Christopher Cole says, "Yo, what's up, Christopher Cole? Thanks for tuning in." It's gonna look different because Godwin's on there, so I could see 5 going in. But then Godwin comes back, make a move, and then you have.
They could do that thing they did with Sterling Shepard last year, just keep him on the practice squad and just understand they're probably going to burn his 4 elevations. Right. So that's possible, I guess. But I'm sure Sterling would rather have an actual contract. So,
yes, I'm sure he would.
That's those sort of things are.
But I agree with him. With Trey Palmer not being on the practice squad, I think Trey would get I think he'd be claimed off waivers.
Probably, right? Yeah, I would imagine. So, he's shown enough promise. Palmer is very fast. I think his biggest issue, from my eyes, is that for someone who is so lethally quick, for some reason he has such a hard time getting separation off the corner, and that ends up once you're really fast, you can't use it if you can't get off your guy. So
that. There's a few things, that you could look at, but that's why he ultimately, besides that speed, fell to the 6th round. I still think he can be a playmaker. I think he'd be
for sure. The top end talent has displayed itself well enough, the Eagles game, that second gear he hits. But you just got to be able to do that more consistently. And in the NFL, everyone's a pretty good football player. So you got to be able to get off your guy. And that's kind of how that deep ball connect happens when you're open and you've got a few steps on your corner. And if you don't have a few steps on your corner, then obviously you're not open and the deep ball doesn't come to you. And he's probably not big enough to be a jump ball guy. So
no, definitely not.
Probably not.
Let's jump back to the edge room though, because the Bucs, they tried to put someone in put resources through the draft in Walker, but that wasn't the only move they made. They got a big pass rusher in Hassan Reddick. So far, there was a good I think Peter Report had it up. It was a good rep of Luke Gedeke going against Hassan Reddick.
Yes, that was last night. Gedeke was
but it hasn't been like that all the time.
No, and I've told anyone who asks me, they're like, "How's Hassan Reddick?" And I'm like, "Well, in training camp, you can count sacks or whatever, with a whistle and whatever. Oh yeah, we had a sack." by those counted subjective measures, he's not getting a bunch of sacks. But when you look at his get-off speed, it's unbelievable. You're like, oh, like that's why he's Hassan Reddick.
He
And
tried a
all
double
that
spin
does,
move on Luke last night.
yes,
It's like,
and all
and it was
that does, yeah, he's ridiculously quick. And all that does is just open up the rushing lanes for everybody else. We talked to Yaya Diaby, and he says the pocket just collapses so much quicker than I'm used to. And it's because guys like Hassan Reddick are just there to bring so much heat on one side that you're opening it up for Yaya. If Chris Brazo's on the other side, you got to get a guy maybe to chip Reddick because of how fast he is. And that's just so good for this Buccaneers edge rushing group. And we asked Kalijah Kancey, or like, what's the thing that most surprised you about Hassan Reddick? And he had an interesting answer, I thought. He said that he was just willing to adapt to what we are doing. That he's like, if you guys need to get free, I'll help you do that over here. If this is how the scheme needs me to work, this is how I'll do it. He said he's not a look at me type of guy who wants all the main attention and main reps. He's just so adaptable. And I think if Hassan Reddick's coming into this season playing like that, with that mentality and with his physical skills, this could be pretty good. We could see Diaby absolutely feast. And of course, if you're that fast and strong, you're going to get yours too. It's going to come.
right.
So,
I was going to say, yeah, I think you're ready to hit the nail on the head there. I can see it easily 20 sacks between Hassan Reddick and Yaya Diaby.
yeah.
And as you mentioned, and I'm glad you brought it up because you're the king of segues today, with Kalijah Kancey, that opens things up for him as well. And he's looked like a different level of player so far. And Vita Vea, and you can see the impact it's made on him. I mean, poor Graham Barton. It's like, you think you're coming into year 2, you got bigger, you got stronger, you got faster, and guess what? So did Vita Vea. And they've had some stalemates, and it's been a battle for him.
He had a sack 2 days ago, I think, where if you've seen the meme where Superman's walking away and Darkseid kind of grabs his cape to pull him back, he did that to Baker Mayfield. Baker started running, and Vita just literally took his jersey and just pulled him back into him. So he's just getting back to the back, but everyone is. And it's like what you mentioned with Diaby saying the pocket just folds in at a much higher rate. And that's only going to be good for everybody. So maybe when you talk about like quote unquote whistle sacks in training camp, Hassan's not racking those up, but he's one of the guys I've genuinely been most impressed with when I watch that defensive line. You just watching him work, you completely understand why he's been one of the dominant edge rushers in the NFL.
Yeah, that, and you just see how, as mentioned, everything just opens up for everybody else, and you're seeing that. Especially in the call-up periods, you're seeing more tight ends to his side than the Bucs probably want to.
Get
because
the chips in there.
Yeah. You got to slow that man down. And part of the problem too is, I mentioned Hassan and Gedeke. Part of that problem is, the Bucs are banged up there right now. They've had a tackle retire. They've had a tackle go on injured reserve after being waived. Obviously, they have a tackle in Tristan Wirfs, the best tackle in the league probably, on PUP right now. They brought in some guys, Tyler McClellan, who's a tackle. They brought in Michael Jordan, who's been a career left guard, but as I understand it, was taking snaps at right tackle.
He's doing a little bit of both that I've seen.
Okay.
He's just in there kind of, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, this guy has zero snaps in the NFL as either tackle spots. So.
The thing about Michael Jordan,
size 6'6", 308 though.
Yeah, he doesn't have a great history though in the NFL. So if you ask me Panthers or Bengals fans about him, they'll start talking. But it's depth, and it's good to have people with starting experience. The thing about the offensive line in the NFL is that you have really good offensive linemen, and they start. And then it tapers off, I think, pretty significantly. Yeah. So it's just one of those skill positions, that requires such a big amount of skill that people are like, why are we signing this guy? He was this, because that's who the best available is. Right. So I think it's still good for the Bucs to be shoring up that area because you have the whole offensive line back. Tristan's hurt right now, obviously. But football happens. And that next man up mentality has to be available at all times. And great teams that win championships have great depth. It's just how it is. It's who can stay healthy the longest, and when someone does go down, who can step up in the intermediate. And the Bucs know that with their roster composition. They know exactly what they're looking for. They know who they want to bring on to make sure that that opening wall can be protected and shored up if anything happens. And those are the types of guys that you get. So I think the moves make sense. And we talked to Todd Bowles, and he says we might get another tackle up in there at some point. And he mentions, too, they're probably going to get another quarterback. And the reason why is because Michael Pratt has a lower back injury, we've been told, and he doesn't look like he's ready to come back soon.
It would be a shame if he had to redshirt this year.
Yeah.
Shame for the Bucs.
So that no one can come claim him off of anything. Yeah. They're probably not going to run with Connor Bazelak the entire year. And if that's the case, they could get a veteran arm in there. Todd was very
out there.
Huh?
There's not much out there.
There's not much out there. Todd was very, Todd was like, about whether it be
they're waiting for something to happen. That's what they're waiting for. They're
Maybe they're just looking at the Cleveland Browns, and they're like, which one of you is going to get cut? Yeah.
They got Carson Wentz, C.J. Beathard, Teddy Bridgewater, Jeff Driscoll, Tyler Huntley, Ian Book, Jaron Hall, and Carter Bradley are your available quarterbacks without digging into last year.
Sure, and you could get a quarterback 3. That could be a number of people, but
it's gonna be. You're looking for a practice squad guy. Is what they're doing. That's what they want.
Right.
One of these guys that come into camp, learn the offense, go on practice squad. So you can rule Carson Wentz out of there because his ego won't let him do that. So Teddy Bridgewater is coaching right now, getting fined for helping inner city children.
Crazy, by the way.
Like maybe Tyler Huntley or Ian Book, I could see. Maybe one of those guys. That makes sense to me. Jaron Hall, I don't know too much about him, but there's not a lot of options out there for quarterback.
There's not, but they'll get one of them probably, and they're not in a rush. Exactly.
No, they're fine. The defense is getting great work with Connor Bazelak, and they're throwing them interceptions every practice. So they're doing that. The defense does not want Connor Bazelak going anywhere for the foreseeable future. So nobody cut your quarterbacks, NFL, because we've got a good thing going here in defense. But
they don't use him too often on offensive reps, and I think that makes sense because in theory he's not supposed to be here for rookie minicamp, and Pratt hasn't been healthy, so. Now he's here, but
he makes
we'll see what they do in that position.
The defense, he makes sure the defense makes the most of those reps. You mentioned something about next man up mentality. That's what it is. And the next man up the Bucs have for going back to the offensive line, left tackle Tristan Wirfs, Charlie Heck.
Correct.
There's been a whole bunch of talk about Charlie Heck, his ability to work with coaches such as Carberry and Pacucci over there, his ability to have all of training camp to get those number 1 reps and get those snaps.
For sure.
His ability to have Hassan Reddick and Yaya Diaby to go against, to have some real competition to test him. The first couple of days are whatever ramp-up periods, but he's had 2 days in pads. I've seen him win. I've seen him lose, especially on one-on-ones. But for the most part, I feel like I've seen a guy who can get the job done, especially if you're tailoring a game plan around protecting him with tight ends and stuff like that. Have your observations been any different? Do you have real concerns about Charlie Heck going out there week 1, other than it's not Tristan Wirfs? I mean, let's put this in the realm of reality, because it's not Tristan Wirfs. But no, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it's good. The most important thing is that he has enough time to acclimate to that line over the entirety of training camp. Remember when Justin Schooley had to go in and then face Aiden Hutchinson frame 1. It's not that type of situation, right? So a lot of people have been talking about the last 2 days in training camp. The offense has looked very sluggish. They've been missing passes. Defense has been winning. And to tell you the truth, they got to have Charlie Heck just acclimate to the chemistry of the offensive line. And I don't think that's a him thing. I think it's just getting used to playing with each other. Josh Grizzard's still trying out a few things in practice. I wouldn't sound the alarm bells or anything like that. And I wouldn't really sound any alarm bells on Charlie Heck either. I think he's been fine. He's going to lose some reps to guys like Yaya Diaby and Hassan Reddick. But he's just getting so much time to prepare and build chemistry on that line. And Tristan Wirfs already has that chemistry, so when he hops back in, you're all good there. But I think that's going to be the biggest thing that's going to allow the Bucs to stay afloat once he's in there. Because I think with all that preparation time and with that competition he is facing in camp, I think it's only going to help him once you get to the regular season. So I'm not particularly worried about Charlie Heck.
Yeah, neither am I. I think that he'll be fine. I think when you got Kate Otten in there and Payne Durham to help him in certain situations when you get those tough matchups. When you look at them, he's got Pierce and Walker in Atlanta, 2 rookies.
Yep.
They've looked really good so far, but still,
But the rookies, yeah.
they're still rookies, and it's their first ever game. You've got, the Eagles. They've lost a bunch of pass rush, but they still know how to get to the quarterback. And they still got some good young pass rushers. Dallas Hunt is someone who I think is going to really kind of surprise a lot of people there. And then you look at the week 2 and week 3 matchups, to me, present the biggest problems as far as pure edge rushers. You've got obviously Will Anderson and Daniil Hunter over there.
That's tough. That's a tough one. One. Yeah.
You've got Jermaine Johnson III and William McDonald over there, and with the Jets,
Also
both are going to present major problems. The Eagles will be more scheme specific. I think the Falcons will be, there's not going to be any tape on the rookies either, so you can't kind of watch what they do to set things up if you're an offensive lineman. So it presents its challenges, but I think if you're Charlie Heck and you've got help, you should win that matchup majority of the time. So I'm not panicking. I'm not panicking about the position. I think in the run game, they'll be just fine. I've got no thoughts or concerns really about him in the run game. I think he'll be able to do enough. And the Bucs use guards so much pulling that, I think he'll be fine with what they're going to ask him to do. Especially, he's got great length to generate power too. So I think they'll be fine in the run game too, which brings me to the run game and Bucky Irving and Rashad White and Sean Tucker. Both of the Williamses are out. DJ and Josh, they're both dealing with an injury, but
that's true.
I don't think either one of them really separated themselves. I think Josh, you can see the burst and the quickness and like the shiftiness and stuff like that. But I don't think he did anything that really pushed himself over the top. Maybe you like the traits more, but as far as just play on the field from what I saw, I didn't really think that he outshined. The trait shined. I didn't think he outshined.
Yeah,
but
I agree.
Bucky's picked up where he's left off.
Bucky. Yeah.
Rashad is still a dangerous person in pass protection in the flat. He can still run the ball almost 1,000 yards his sophomore season. Can't forget that. And then Sean Tucker had a night last night. Talk about this running back room, what you've seen, and talk about Sean Tucker having a little night himself last night.
Yeah, he had a lot of work last night. They gave him the ball quite a bit. He caught a touchdown in 11v11s as well. And then Todd Bowles said after the practice that he's got everything we want in a back. He's aggressive, good center of balance and center of gravity, and that he's a great addition to the team, which led to last night a bunch of fantasy football people in my mentions going, "Oh, best ball, what do you think? So there's some copium going on there. I think with people who are going to try and pick up John Tucker really late in a draft. Yeah, there's just so many backs in that room, and you keep hearing Liam Cohen and Todd Bowles are like, we're going to use all 3 of them. But it's hard to use all 3 of them, especially when Bucky Irving just does Bucky Irving things and Rashad White. Valuable as a pass catcher, valuable as a pass blocker as well in that regard. So I don't know how much Pony's going to come back. That formation with both Rashad White and Bucky Irving is a big thing for Liam Cohen. Genuinely actually curious to see if we end up using that. Yeah, because that was one of the hallmarks of how good Liam Cohen was last year to me, was that when you had things that weren't working in that traditional 11 personnel zone run blocking sort of thing, he was just like, oh, let me just fix it by doing this. And it worked.
Pony, and then we'll go back to doing what we want to do.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know if the Red Pony Club is going to end up going back. But to that point, there's a really stacked room, and they like what Sean Tucker can do if he needs to do something. So I think should be no qualms about something there. Yeah, for sure.
Role. And obviously, with a new rule adjustment they made this year, they expect there to be even more returns. So I think they do it out to the 35 now for a touchback or something.
Yeah, they're really trying to make it so you don't kick it into the end zone. So that'll be very valuable. And then, of course, depending on what happens with Rashad White next year, I'm not sure he's going to be back in Tampa Bay. He probably wants a different starting opportunity. If Sean Tucker hangs around, then he'll be RB2 before long. So that'll be his path to ascension in that regard.
All right, we got 2 more groups to talk about, and then
Let's do it.
We'll get out of here. Linebackers were like a major concern. I remember heading into the offseason.
Yes.
And into the draft. Obviously, we were all talking about it. Jahad Campbell was the hot name. Who could the Bucs sign as a linebacker? They signed Anthony Walker, and they drafted nobody.
Not playing.
Right, who's out injured on NFL.
Who's out injured right now.
They drafted nobody, and then they didn't re-sign any of their linebackers that were on the team last year. They let J.J. Russell go. They let obviously KJ Britt go, and they picked up 2 undrafted guys. So there was a lot of noise heading into mini camps and OTAs and stuff like that about the linebacker. Since then, I don't hear a lot of noise about the linebacker room. Are we bought in on Servassier Dennis being the real deal?
I mean, he's been able to get himself into good positions to make some plays, but like, I think Servassier Dennis has looked pretty good in the times that we have seen him play. I think that's true. I think what Bucs fans sometimes don't realize when they're like, "Oh, we're good, we have Servassier Dennis." He hasn't played a full season yet, not even close. So he needs to be able to consistently play that game, and he's going to get more reps this time. He was those first 2 games where we had him there. He was a third down sort of passing down back, and that was his specialty. And now he's got to do everything right next to Lavonte David. So, I mean, I think the ceiling is there for him to be very productive, but I'm not ready to go, "Oh, we did it. We patched a hole. We're good." That'll be curious. And Lavonte David, of course, fantastic football IQ still. Made some turnovers in that regard. Still can get silent on the sideline just because he knows where to be in position. And as far as coverage goes, he's slowed down a lot. So you're going to need someone to be able to cover tight ends and, wide receivers in that intermediate area in a more reliable way. And that has to be Servassier Dennis because they didn't get anybody else. And Anthony Walker is supposed to be good at that, but he's hurt. We were told initially he was week to week. This is week 2. This is week 2.
Going into week 2, yeah.
Going into week 2. Still not back yet. So he's not getting any reps in that system at the moment. Deion Jones is there, but he's also up there in age too. So I think that's I
think Deion Jones has looked pretty good.
He has. And that being said, that's still the biggest point of concern, I think, on the roster for sure. And it could be bad still if that doesn't end up doing what it does.
Outside of Servassier Dennis' potential like health, because that's the question, right? Can he stay healthy? Can the up in snaps stay healthy? Do you have any concerns about the talent to play the position at an every down layer, including, coverage, blitzing, tackling? Are there concerns there for you if he's got the talent to play that, or is it more health and can he do it with sustained extra snaps, and can it be something that is consistent throughout the season?
Sure, there is. And the talent, I think, that consistency is what we're talking about. I think when he did it in that limited amount of time that we've seen, I think that's great. And he did play well. And if he plays like that the whole time, then I think they'll be fine. But you can play like that in short bursts, but can you, with more reps, do that every down? And I do have concerns about that because we haven't seen it.
Right. Those are fair. I just wanted to make sure that it's not a talent issue that you have, because I think your concerns are at the top of everyone's list, but I don't know if enough fans know if they know the talent.
I think the talent that we've seen from him in the Washington game, we have seen his ability to play this linebacker position really well, talent-wise, right? Yeah. So I think he can. And I think it's not like he's devoid of talent. He's not going to be able to. There is a window where he can do that, but it's whether or not, even when he's healthy, if he can keep that going for an extended period of time, I think could be the worry. And we'll see. And even then, though, to be fair, I mean, even if he does it some of the time, it's still probably better than what they had last year. So that's at least somewhat encouraging. But yeah, no, I would agree with anyone. I saw Ryan Donnelly in the comments there said the LB room scares the crap out of him. I would probably agree. that's the position to be worried about with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers team. Secondary would be secondary, but
I
they look
wouldn't
pretty
say
good.
secondary. I would say maybe the depth of the safety room.
Yeah, but they
is
look good. They look good at this camp. So that's reassuring that Tyke Smith's been flying around all over the place. Benjamin Morrison. I mean, when Benjamin Morrison played in those first 2 snaps we talked about, where he had the Mike Evans thing on the pick, he was in for Jamel Dean for the first 2 snaps of 11-11s. So
I heard.
that's pretty encouraging, right?
So he is competing with Jamel Dean for that spot.
I think
That's what it tells
absolutely. I
me.
would say yes. I would.
That's
say
what
so.
that tells me is he's made enough plays where they want to give him some shots going up against the ones, and it didn't come at the expense of Zion. It came at the expense of Jamel Dean. Another one of those rooms that this linebacker room scares the heck. Ryan Donnelly in the comments. I see Jeremy too. What's going on, Jeremy? Is the linebacker room and the tight end room. The tight end room is pretty weak. We're seeing that now with Cade Otton out. Payne Durham has had some struggles. They got Cole Keefe in there, and they've got a guy who, when I was putting together, talking about like our topics, a big exclamation point next to his name, Devin Culp. He's had a phenomenal, I'm not even going to say camp. I'm going to just say offseason. He looked great in the spring. He's picked that up and continued that so far. I know he had a tough drop the other day, but he's had a really good training camp so far. Does he make you feel a little bit more comfortable about the depth going in here, or are you still like, this is still a really shallow room, like with linebacker and what we thought would be safety potentially, but that's looking to be strong.
Yeah, from the tight end perspective, I think Colts made a really good show of things, and he plays a different style of tight end than Cade Otton does, right? He's a go tight end. He's a receiver, more so maybe than a blocker, but he's been playing very well. And Payne Durham has been in for Cade Otton, who's been out with a hamstring tweak. They're just being cautious with him, but he's been out for 3 training camp days. And Payne Durham has not been making the most of those 3 training camp days. He had 2 drops last night by our count. He had another one a few camps ago, and he went up for a jump ball, and Tyke Smith batted it out of his hands behind him. So he has had some rough up and down sort of days, and Culp has just continued looking really good in the receiving game, right? He's been in the right space. He's quick. Still a big body. So that's where Devin Culp's going to make his money, right? And he's already making a good argument that, hey, if there's another tight end on the field, I want it to be me. So I think that's pretty impressive. But I don't hate the depth there. I liked Payne Durham from what I saw from the past few years when he's been playing in games. So I actually like Payne. So, and I like that Devin Culp is kind of making those strides so far in camp. Obviously, we got to see how it happens in the regular season because that's real football is played. But I'm not too worried about that as far as depth. I think that's fine, especially with Cade Otton. Otton plays so much. And I know there's debates over just how good of a tight end he is. I'm a little lower on Cade maybe than some people are. But the fact of the matter is he plays a quadrillion snaps all the time. So as far as depth goes, you feel pretty comfortable with Cade Otton playing a lot. So that's not as big of a deal. I think maybe the linebackers just aware, man, if you have a linebacker go down and you have an old Levante David and a so far injury-prone Servase Dennis are your 2 starting linebackers. If one of them goes down, it'd be bad news. Levante David got hurt in that Washington Commanders game, and if they had made it to the next game, who knows what his status would have been.
Right.
So he's still old, and he's still a great player in many respects, and still consistently able to produce in certain areas of the game. But being older, your chance of injury just goes up. So I would be much more worried about that linebacker room for depth because it's already kind of shaky at the start of things. And then, man, once you get past the first wall there, it gets rough.
But that's like a lot of linebacker rooms, though. There's not many.
For sure, it's another one of those
linebacker
situations like we talked about with the offensive line, where you have really good offensive linemen, and then you have the other people.
Maybe you have a 6th offensive lineman, and he's either a guard or a tackle or a center.
Yeah, Yeah, exactly.
Like,
That's
you don't
kind of
have one
similar
at
to
each.
linebacker. Yeah, the starting caliberness, to make up a word, of a linebacker after your first two in like a 3-4 scheme or your first three in like a 4-3 scheme.
It's tough.
It's tough. Yeah.
It's definitely tough. Back on the tight ends, I did want to say, I really like what Devin Culp's doing, and I agree with you. He's making a case to get on the field. Part of it is because, and I wrote an article over at Bucs Game Day. Check out all of our work over there. We're crushing
Please
it.
go
Right now.
do that. Yes, we got articles out for days.
Yeah, we're getting at least 8, 9, 10 up a day. So go check out all of our content, training camp recap, all sorts of good stuff. But I wrote a piece about Devin Culp the other day about how he's the secret weapon that no one's talking about. And then Baker actually talked about him in the way I was talking about him. Like the next day, I was like, "Oh,
the
perfect."
secret weapon that one person is talking about." Yeah.
Right. But like, it's not being talked about by like a lot of fans and stuff like that. But the way they can use him, because he's not a traditional tight end. He's one of those move athletic tight ends who are a good wide receiver. He was the fastest tight end in the combine last year when they drafted him, and he can stretch the field. And to put him out there and you get a look on him against KJ Britt and you are licking your chops. And if not, if they say, oh, wait, crap, Devin Culp's right there, and you have to bring your safety down, Mike Evans is licking his chops because now he's got a one-on-one matchup. So he creates so much matchup variables that teams will have to deal for, even out of 12 personnel, that if he can really continue to build upon and show that himself, he could take Payne Durham over as tight end 2 in a sense, because they'll want to get him out there for those looks more often. And I'm sure they'll have 12 packages for both Payne and Devin in that instance, where you've got Cade and you've got Devin and
maybe we can give poor Cade a break for once.
Right. I mean, they could
like 99.9 offensive snaps.
I mean, and they can even look to use him in situations where he's the only tight end on the field because he can run, like that. If he can crisp his routes and just stay consistent with his hands and his development, he could be a real big threat. 2 things, and then we're out of here. Baker Mayfield's throwing interceptions left and right. What's going on? Are we losing it? Is training camp over? Are we taking the under right now in the Bucs season wins? And are we taking the over on the interceptions? What's happening with Baker?
Yeah, I think it's over, and the Bucs should just forfeit every game now.
I agree.
think that's probably to say. But now, if you guys remember during the quarterback competition between him and Kyle Trask, Baker Mayfield also threw a lot of interceptions that camp, and that's just him getting used to where he can put the ball, how much he can push the limit. Right, he's a motorsport metaphor. It's like when you're qualifying, you have to see how much you can push the limit of the track. That's what he's doing here in training camp. And then once the regular season comes into it, you kind of know exactly where your arm is and where your limits are. So I've talked about this in our last recaps at Bucs Game that we do after every training camp. Immediately, you can go to our YouTube and see it. But you see the offense playing bad. You see them struggling. They have for the past few days. I wouldn't start ringing the alarm bells. A lot of it is situational stuff. It's experimental. And it's players trying to figure out where they're at and what they can do and what they can't do. So a lot of these plays and drives, it could be scripted. Some of them are call-ups. You never know from the inside. Right. Baker Mayfield threw a lot of interceptions in 2023 in camp. He went out, he threw 28 touchdowns, played very well, won a playoff game with the Bucs that year. So that's kind of where we're at.
And Baker even said, like some of, a lot of them are those experimental, some of them are, he's going to make some mental mistakes and try to do something in here and there, but it's nothing to be concerned about. I think they're going to be fine. Last thing I want to touch on while we're here, we got Grizzo yesterday at the podium at the podcast. So what have you seen from this offense so far? It's very similar. I haven't seen too many like new crazy wrinkles.
No, I haven't. Yeah.
But you can tell when they're on the call-up periods because Grizz will have a walkie-talkie that he's calling plays into Baker with. During those periods, has there anything that's made you think, oh, no?
Well, I think something that's been interesting to me is that it seems like so far he's been working on that short and intermediate game, passing to running backs, getting, balls in the flat. Which is kind of where a lot of Liam Cohen's offense made his bank last year, but they've mentioned they want to get more vertical. And I feel like this camp, they have rarely gotten more vertical. And I did mention, I did ask Josh Krizar directly about that at the press conference last night. He's like, yeah, we talked about it. It's a new dimension you want to add to our offense. But we rarely do see that in camp, I think. There's a few deep shots here and there. I have always been the opinion that Baker Mayfield's deep ball accuracy is not fantastic. He's one of the top 5 strongest arms in the league. But his placement, there are some throws, I think, deep that he can't quite make. But we haven't really seen a lot of those. It's been a lot of up close and personal stuff, and that might be just what Grizzard's working on right now.
Right.
But I found it interesting that we've talked to Baker Mayfield and said, yeah, we want to get more vertical. We talked to Josh Grizzard and goes, yeah, we want to get more vertical. And I haven't really personally been seeing them absolutely launch it on certain plays.
Doing it in a
like maybe that we thought
there.
so. Yeah.
They're just doing it in walkthroughs when we're not there. That's all.
Yeah, that's true. They're like, all right, they're gone. Start
slinging it, Bake.
Yeah.
Put your sauce on it.
Yeah, just absolutely launch it. We've had like a few. There was one to Jalen McMillan that was pretty impressive a few days ago in camp. And then those first 2 plays last night on 11v11s, the shots from Mike Evans and the one that got picked off, those were like 30, 35-yard shots, which you could consider, deeper. They're the upper range of intermediate, probably. So, yeah.
They're probably just waiting for the temperature to go down, man. That's what it is. Like, once the temperature
honestly,
goes down,
dude,
all that running deep for corners and safeties, that screams hamstrings. Don't do it.
Yeah. Honestly, man, people of the offense is so sluggish. I'm like, well, yeah, they're walking on the sun. So, but even then, they were indoors last night and still couldn't quite pick it up. So I think we'll be fine. I think it's gonna take some time for the team to understand Josh Grizzard's own tendencies as an offensive play caller and what he likes to do. Charlie Heck still has to get used to playing with everybody, and they have to get used to playing with Charlie Heck, especially Ben Bredesen, who usually knew what to expect with Tristan Wirfs, now not so much. I think there'll probably be a day coming up maybe tomorrow or the next 3 days or so. Good God, next 3 days in the heat, where the offense is really going to click.
Yeah, I agree. And they'll put all those questions to rest. And again, like people's questions come from all of us reporters reporting what we're seeing. So we're the catalyst of all your questions, and hopefully we'll get to some answers for all your questions as well. Okay. That's going to do it here on the Parlay podcast, here on the Sick Podcast. Now, River, go ahead, promote yourself, where you're at, what you're doing, what you got going on. We got a big show tonight over there on the pod, don't we?
Yeah, we do. I'm writing articles on Bucs Game Day. Make sure if you want to know what's happening, the latest from every training camp, make sure you go there. Tonight, we've got the wonderful Greg Allman on our podcast. I know you just had him on the Sick Podcast. Was it last week?
Yep.
Yep. So he's doing the rounds. He's doing the tour, and we're gonna have him on all to ourselves
on tour though.
At 7. Yeah, for sure. Listening to Greg's always so much fun. He's very insightful. So that'll be fun. And then we're gonna be back at it next few days in training camp. My instant reactions come out instantly. So if you want to know, you see, practice has ended. Surely he won't have the article up by now. I usually do. So make sure you go out and look for those. I'll be giving you my insights, and then we'll kind of talk about those on the pods and stuff like this. So it's a big time. Football's back. I think tomorrow is the Hall of Fame.
Tomorrow.
So
Trey Lance is starting, number 3 overall.
Exactly. I can't wait to watch that for 10 minutes and then remember why I turn off the Hall of Fame game every year. So that'll be fun. It'll be football. We'll take all that we can get after not having a hit for quite a bit.
The best part about the Hall of Fame game is when you get that random, like, so-and-so has scored at like 12:30, and you're like, this game's still going on, and you realize they've been under delay twice for like 2 hours.
Yeah, it always storms at this point in Canton, Ohio, every year.
Why is the game still going on at 11:30 at night? It started at 7.
Trey Lance dies for the pylon at 2 a.m. You're like, oh, yeah, that's right. So.
Yeah, you put him back in.
Yeah, someone got hurt. Oh, there he goes again. Yeah. So that'll be fun.
Teams lost 0-0.
Yeah, just make sure you stick around. Come hang out with us tonight, guys, at 7 p.m. Hear the Cannons, Bucs Game Day on YouTube. And then check out all of our stuff on the website. We appreciate it. JC writes some good stuff for us. I write some good stuff for us. Caleb Skinner, Colin Halpin. We got a lot of great guys there. So for sure.
Yeah, we've got a bunch of good ones. Darius Hayes, Jeremy Brenner.
Darius Hayes, for sure.
Shout
Shout out to the guys.
The team BG right here. The team, check us out. We're killing it. And we've got great plans for the season too. But we're also got great plans right here. We're going to be getting some more players and coaches on here soon. So working through with the Bucs PR department to get everything approved and everything up there. But you can catch it all right here at the Pirate Parlay Podcast on the Sick Podcast Network. For River, I'm JC Allen. We're out here. Peace. See you guys later. Out.
See ya.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast Pirate Parlay on YouTube, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.